Indy. One word says it all. And for the second time, this legendary venue hosts one of motorsports' most prestigious events, the SCCA's National Championship Runoffs. Together, it's a can't-miss bucket list pairing, and almost 900 entries have arrived, all pursuing two things: a chance to kiss the bricks and a gold medal that says champion. Hi, everybody, and welcome. It's Haggerty Race Day here at the 58th running of the SCCA Runoffs, our broadcast presented by Mazda. And if we were here for the 500 or the Brickyard, we'd be waiting for that window in Terre Haute. This is SCCA road racing. It's raining pretty good, but we are going to go racing. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Creamer. Tom O'Gorman alongside Hayward Wagner down in pit lane. And, Tomo, you can take a look at the weather here. It is going to be a sketchy, interesting race.
It's going to be a lot of fun, too, and we're going to be watching Super Touring Lite. We'll talk about the class in a little bit, but this class has always put on a great show. Things were actually more spread out in qualifying than we'd expect from a class like this, but that was all in the dry. Things have been thrown completely out the window. We're racing in the wet, and that's going to be very interesting for a track that drivers don't get to see very often, if not maybe once every 5 years.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Last time anybody could run here was in 2017, and it wasn't raining during that event, so this is new ground. And speaking of the track, let's take a look now at our track map presented by Mazda. 14 turns, 2.6 miles. Straights, technical sections. This place is pretty fun.
It is a lot of fun, and you can see we're driving on the dark gray road course. You're headed down towards turn one, down quote-unquote wrong way towards through the Speedway, and it's quite a bit of standing water. A little bit of banking trails it down to the driver's right side, but then a heavy braking zone into turn one, into turn 2 and 3. They all link together, get a little bit bigger and faster, but there is a big river that's formed exiting turn 1 that you have to cross before you get to turn 2. Then through the tricky infield section, 3, 4, 5, a pair of triple right-handers, fine puddles all through there before we get into a braking zone for turn 6. Long carousel that drives kind of like a skid pad, and then onto the Holman Straight, which has 2 different surfaces and a painted white line that's going to get awful slick here in the wet. Then we go into sector 2, turns 7, 8, 9, and 10, kind of the S's section, if you want to call it that. Another big river and some puddles forming between turns 7 and 8 that these drivers are going to have to navigate before coming back up onto the banking. Now, we talked about that banking, draining the water down to the bottom. Turn 11 is at the bottom. It's going to get drained right onto that track into Sector 3 before a heavy braking zone for Turn 12, where another puddle and river will meet the drivers before getting to Turn 13 and sweeping back up through Turn 14, which is, again, at the bottom of some banking and is having some serious puddling.
Yeah, lots of challenges here. We just want to remind everybody, just in case you weren't aware of it, that it's a fact. More Mazdas are road raced on any given weekend than any other car brand. And that comes down to 2 things: a great car and great support for the drivers that race them. Big thank you to Mazda. Here is a look. Off to your right, that is the entrance to turn 12. You come up that little bit of banking into 12. This turn 13 is actually one of the more critical corners on this track because it sets you up through the run through 14 and up onto the banking to make a pass down into pit lane and down the pit straight. And next to that is pit lane. And down there is the third member of our team, Hayward Wagner. And Hayward, there's some pretty interesting news that's coming out from the fine folks at SCCA and Mazda.
Yeah, we'll get to that midway through the race. We're going to talk about the MX-5 Cup, but right now we're just talking about STL. It's actually slacked up a bit. It's not raining quite as hard as it was. I've talked to all the guys here on the grid. Danny says he loves the wet. He's really excited to get out and run in this. Joe's not quite as big a fan of the wet. Greg's never really run in the wet. So we've got a pretty good mix of experience levels. One interesting note, though, when I was talking to Joe about the wet, he said he's comfortable with it, but this is not the car he would pick. He would pick a heavier front-wheel drive car that really drives the tires down into the ground. So keep an eye for the heavier cars a little bit further back on the grid to come up front. Before we get away, one last piece of technology note. Recognize this, I'm a dad. That is a apple juice bottle that's been cut right at the flute. It's running down a hose and blowing fresh air across Joe's windshield on the inside. That is what a defrost system looks like in STL.
Hey, whatever works. Thanks, Hayward. That's a great story and a great application of something that, hey, necessity is the mother of invention, as they say. It looks like they have that one figured out, and that's pretty cool. Now, here's one thing. Denny Steyn, I was fortunate a couple of years ago at the June Sprints to be there, and this race in that car unfolded in the wet. He disappeared. The guy is really good in the rain.
He is really good in the rain, but he doesn't necessarily have the platform you choose for the rain, being a front-engine, rear-wheel drive car. He doesn't have that engine over the drive wheels where a majority, at least a half of this field, most of them Honda products, will have that front-wheel drive. And Super Touring Lite is a production-based class, 2-liter engines and under. You see it's mostly made up of those Hondas and Mazdas, but we do have the odd Scion FRS, maybe in a Mazda RX-8 or Honda S2000 out there as well. So you're going to see a lot of very similar-looking cars, but they do get to do engine swaps within their manufacturer. They get to modify the suspension and the driveline just a little bit, but they are production based and they're pretty simple, straightforward, fun race cars.
Absolutely, and they usually put on a fabulous show, so we're looking forward to that. It's a big field, so we're just going to run the grid across the bottom of the screen. You can pick out your favorite driver and cheer for them. A couple of drivers we want to note. One, Denny Steyn, did qualify up front, so he is a tire rack pole sitter and doing a great job. It's his 4th career pole in runoffs competition. He is also the one driver in the field that is super sweep eligible. Just has to hang on and win the thing. Gee, that's not going to be tough at all. And then we also have the driver that has been named the Hawk Breakthrough Performer, and that is most positions improved from the qualifying session on Tuesday to Wednesday, and that goes to Gonzo Aponte out of St. Cloud, Florida, in his AKT Racing Team Pope Machine Shop Honda Civic. 24 positions he jumped from day 1 to day 2, and eventually stuck it right up into the top 15, sitting 13th in that number 44. The legendary yard of bricks right there. Every time you drive by that and you feel that little thump, you know you're on pretty hallowed ground.
For sure. And then looking back from Danny Steyn, Joe Mosier and Greg Malloy in a pair of very similar Honda CRXs. Malloy, obviously we've seen Mosier a lot, actually already won a championship this weekend here at the runoffs. But Malloy is relatively new to runoffs competition, finished on the podium last year. I believe made his runoffs debut at Indy the first time we came here, and has been extremely fast in that CRX, been working very hard. All 3 of those drivers under the track record from 2017 in qualifying. Then we get to a couple of different names. Jimmy Libre out of Puerto Rico in another Civic, and then Taz Harvey, familiar name, in a Civic Type R. An Integra Type R. So we have 4 out of 5 on the front 5 positions, front-wheel drive cars.
Taz, back in the day, he raced a lot of World Challenge when I was announcing it, also some IMSA stuff when I was announcing it. He is just flat quick, and he was really good in the rain, and when you're up Dyson wet or dry, you're running with guys like P.D. Cunningham and Pierre Kleinubing and the like, and he was always right at the sharp end of things. So in these conditions, I think he might be somebody to keep an eye on. Max Guy, too, is generally pretty good in the wet. And yeah, that's a good point. Mosier already a champion. That he is now a 3-time gold medalist and going for a 4th and doing it from the outside of the front row. This is going to be 19 laps or 40 minutes, and in these conditions it might tilt to the 40 minutes, especially if we have any kind of caution or whatever, but you can see it's just dark out there anyway, and then you get the spray up in the air and it just turns into, visibility is going to be a serious issue for everybody outside of the leader in this one.
What we learned in some of the past races where it was wet is that this track doesn't have the best drainage, and what it creates are these fine puddles. This is a great camera shot. Anywhere where you see that kind of darker water forming, those are very small puddles. As the car crosses those, it floats for just a second and then gains grip back. It can be very unpredictable, so these drivers are going in with a big mystery at this green flag.
And there are also spots where you'll see it's real dark and shiny in an absolute pattern. That's a patch, and you got to be careful for those too. All right, pace car is in. We are about ready to start the run for the gold for STL Super Touring Lite here at the 58th running of the SCCA's National Championship Runoffs. Denny Steyn in that blue and orange Mazda leading the field up. Joe Mosier alongside, and they are about to hit it. You can see the starter stand center top of your screen. You'll know we're green. STL is underway. Let's see. Look at Mosier just take off. Front-wheel drive car just launching. Absolutely huge start. And you can see Denny Steyn swallowed up just a little bit. Now back in 4th at best at this stage. And Mosier now protecting down to the inside. Big swing to the outside, side by side, down into turn 1.
Jimmy Libre around the outside going for the lead. The rest of the field streams through. Everyone nice and cautious. Taz Harvey having a bad start. He's on the outside in the white number 8. Falling back a number of positions, as is Denny Steyn. Look at Max Guy in the prelude around the outside, challenging for the top positions, back from 9th on the grid.
Phenomenal run, and Libre did get up alongside, but Mosier was able to hang on to it, and Denny Steyn just glommed onto the back of Mosier. And Denny, big, deep move down into this really tricky, long turn 6, and he doesn't know that it should be a front drive car better out there. That was phenomenal. He clearly has an understanding of where the grip is.
Maybe here to say it wants to prove us wrong. He had a terrible start, maybe in the wrong gear or something, but then just coming back with a vengeance, almost 3 wide for second. Now we have Yibre powering around Mosier for second place in that newer Civic.
And Mosier now diving down to the inside. Yibre, but Steyn, look at that run around the outside. It was a little bit too wide, and Yibre, I think Steyn was thinking there's going to be good grip out there, and the problem was it was just too long a run. Yibre knifes through, picks up the lead once again.
Either that or he found out that the braking zone for turn 7 is a little more slick than he thought it was. Now here is where they're experiencing quite a bit of puddling. Look at all the water washing off of Yibre right into the vision of Danny Steyn as they come up to the banking. Now we'll get a little bit of consistent grip as they're on that banked braking zone.
And then the turn down into 12 after you said it, a really tricky braking zone. Yibre letting the car float out a little bit more, and Steyn keeping that exit a little bit more tight. I think that's why right there he wanted to get that drive out of 13. Now he's right up behind Yibre, and this is where, it's sort of to heck with visibility. I want the toe for as long as I can get it here, and we'll see what he's going to be able to do. But look at the break these two have already made.
Not just the toe, but the tire tracks of the car in front will clear the way for just a moment. If you stay in those same tire tracks, you're not going to hydroplane like the guy in front of you. Most of these cars don't have headlights either. That's going to be tricky for us to see. But they're side by side down on the brakes into turn 1.
Here it is. There's Steyn. Watch for the over-under. It's really tough normally to make this outside move. Now he's going to square up. Oh, nice job by Denny. He's such an experienced racer. Yeah, he's on the outside, but if he can ramp the outside, and right there, Yibre realized, I'm not quite there, and Denny just came rocketing across the front. Mosier, Max Gee, and then Greg Malloy sitting right there in the top 5 right now. Boy, and you're right, Taz Harvey has dropped big time down to 12.
See in the background in just a minute, there's a green MX-5 that's come from 14th. That's the 57 of Chuck Hines challenging for 6th. We'll get a look at him in a minute, but there's Denny Steyn driving onto the Holman straight for the second lap, starting to pull out quite a bit of a lead from from Libre. And then it's Mosier, Gee, Malloy, and there's that green MX-5 Chuck Hines from 14th to 6th, and that's what the rain does, the great equalizer. Maybe that car is not quite as fast in the dry, but now he's challenging for 5th, clear of Malloy.
That's impressive, and we have an award here. It's called the Sunoco Hard Charger Award, courtesy of Sunoco, the official fuel of the SCCA, and it's most of positions improved in the race. He's an early candidate with that start. That was superb. And he did that in absolutely horrific visibility.
He really did, and now he's got his sights set on Max Gee and Joe Mosier, who are having a bit of a spat for themselves for third. Gee had that great start, but hasn't been able to clear Mosier yet.
Steyn got to the front now. This time he is checking out. Gee going to try and get down underneath. And Mosier, having none of it, just closes the door, comes through. You can see Yibre right there doing a nice job. There is Mosier outside of the front row. And, I'll tell you what, I think Hayward may have hit it right on the head. That car, it's not as heavy at the front as you may like, and that presents a problem.
Sure, the engine in the CRX much smaller than the engine in Jimmy Yibre's car that's in front. And this class is essentially power to weight, so the more power you want to run, the more weight you have to run. And that heavier car of Jimmy Yibre seems to be behaving a little bit better in these conditions.
Here's the turn in down into 1. Mosier just trying to float through and hang on to whatever he can here, but he's already 3 seconds adrift of Yibre. Then Gee, and then Chuck Hines. There is Chuck in that green Mazda MX-5 out of Cameron, North Carolina. Having a really good start to this race. When you're racing in these kind of conditions, once everything settles a bit, you just try and wait a little while before you really start to push again. or do you feel like you just got to get after it right now?
What I try to do is never do the same thing twice if the first thing didn't work. So if I'm going to drive on the dry line and there's no grip, I'm going to drive somewhere else until I find the grip or until I rule out where there is no grip. What I'm seeing here is the drivers are essentially driving on the dry line. They're just navigating puddles.
Right.
And that kind of makes sense because this road course doesn't get run very much, which means it doesn't get a lot of tire scuff across the surface, and that's what makes it slick when it rains. So this track might actually not really have much of a rain line so much as a puddle line.
Here's the yellow Mazda right there of Steven Johnson running in the 7th spot, chased by the 42 of Pope. Here is a look right behind them is the 02 of Stephen Zhu out of Houston, Texas in his Honda Civic. You see X Factor on the side. That is a car that I think Chris Haldeman has worked on and does a really good job at. And Stephen Zhu also did some pro racing in the World Challenge.
He did in a little bit of a newer Civic, and you see him chuck it into turn 10. He's feeling comfortable in that newer 9th Gen Civic Si, which would have had a smaller engine put into it. That car came with an engine that's too large for this category, but prepped for this, and it's nice underneath the number 4. Steven Johnson had a little bit of an issue, and is going to get past from the 02.
Yeah, nice move. Johnson trying to stay with him around the outside. And right behind these guys is the number 37 Mazda of Amy Mills. And she had a great opening few laps, too. Went from that 16th up into 10th. Ooh, look at this. Ebray's back in now 3rd as Moser motors by on that long run down the front straight here at Indy.
He does. It resets the fast lap of the race, does Joe Moser, in that dark orange number 36. He's faster than Danny Steyn, only by 0.3, but this is a long way to go. If he continues to lap quicker than Danny Steyn, he will almost certainly catch him.
That was 0.3 of a second just in that lap alone. So, and now he'll have better visibility. And every once in a while, you know, you were talking about it. Sometimes you want to follow somebody for a while, not just because of those tire tracks, but you can see where are they slipping and where are they stuck. And then once you figure it out, then if you've got the speed, get around them. And then he's got some work to do now because he's got about 4 seconds he's going to have to make up to catch the fleet Denny Steyn right now.
Kind of what makes what Danny Steyn did at the start of this race so impressive. He wasn't following someone, really. Right. He just went out and established his own line, his own rhythm, and he started to drive away, even getting comfortable using the painted curbs, which the paint will tend to be very slippery. You tend to want to stay off of those, but he's kind of confidently using them even. The car just floating beautifully. Again, using the dry line, but there's not much puddling. I wonder if the rain has succeeded just a little bit.
Well, Denny is something of a Regenmeister, as they say. And really putting that on full display here right now. I mean, and that car is just exceptionally well prepped and turned out, too. It is a missile in this class. There's Moser. There's that turn 14. Just keeps it tucked nice and tight to the curbing. You can see the spray coming off of those tires. They are doing the job getting that water out from underneath, but you get to a certain speed and it's tough, even for a well-treaded tire, to be able to keep up with what's going on. And so that's where you, even on the straights, you have to be a little bit careful. Your brake applications have to be very gentle. Ebray dropping back just a little bit. Here comes Max G.
It's going to be deep on the brakes, too. That pulls up along the outside and starts to turn in, leaves each other some room. Ebray's in just a little bit deep, not going to make the corner, comes across the nose of G, who's heads up and gives him the space, doesn't want a dent on the front of the car, at least this early.
Yeah, and that wasn't Ebray trying to do something nasty and everything. He just was a little too hot into the turn. Now G dives down underneath, heading into turn 4, gets through clean. And let's see, can he keep it as we do this long arc from 4 up and around into 5, and now this long left-hander here, turn 6. And G left that big inviting open right there, but he was actually on a little bit quicker line in terms of grip out there. Ebray stuck his nose inside, but it wasn't going to work.
Yeah, the line you saw G run is definitely a qualifying line, but it's a little bit risky to use it in a race, especially with a car right behind you. But G is actually a former champion at the Indy Motor Speedway and STU in this very car. Andy's an instructor at the Mid-Ohio Driving School, and if anybody who's been to Mid-Ohio or heard about Mid-Ohio in the wet knows that it is the most treacherous place to drive in the wet. So this might feel like a comfortable cruise for Max G.
You bring up a really good point here. Yeah, out of Lucas, Ohio. And behind the top 4, that Chuck Hines and Greg Malloy are in an absolute swap. They have a battle. They have swapped the lead a couple of times in the last couple of laps. It is back and forth. Just fun to be watching and following here. And it's back in the hands right now. Malloy just had it. Hines has just gone back by, and watch under braking. What's going to happen here? Whoa, and he's off. Greg a little bit too hot in. Nice save.
Keeps his foot in it, the front wheel drive, gets him out. A little too optimistic.
Yep, he sure is giving it a go. Nice thing about front wheel drive, when something you start sliding, you turn the wheels where you want to go and just give it some throttle. You hope it'll pull you around. But now that gives a large margin of comfort at this stage to the 57 of Hines.
Wow, Danny Steyn is reset the fast lap of the race last time through, but this time Joe Mosier smashes it. Goes from a 1:04 from Danny Steyn to a 2 minutes 03. So he pulls a full second out of the fastest lap of the race and is kind of stabilizing that lead to just at 4 seconds. If they keep exchanging like this, I don't know that they'll either catch or come back to each other, but they're exchanging fast laps like it's qualifying for their lives almost.
And it is still coming down. It's not raining as hard as it was, but it's still coming down enough to keep this track fully damp. And the one concern you have with rain tires, they have to be really soft to be effective. And if the track starts to dry out a little bit, then you could start overheating the reins very easily. Right now, that is not an issue. But for Denny Steyn, you know the crew is telling him just kind of what kind of lap that Mosier just turned, and now can he respond?
For sure, and you would think that MX-5 is not a particularly heavy car, but the CRX from behind is about 2,300 and a half pounds. This MX-5 is almost 2,800 pounds, so that's about 500 pounds difference. Danny getting real comfortable throwing the car around, but Danny has that extra weight to push the car into the surface that Hayward was mentioning.
Yeah, that's a good point. A heavy car in these conditions, once it starts to slide, then it's just an issue of just centrifugal force working against you, but it can give you that little bit of grip as you talk about. And even though both cars have the engine up front, it doesn't do that much. With a front drive car with an engine up front, that can usually be pretty effective, but as you point out, it's just maybe too light. Well, look at this scrap continues here as Ebre working G over pretty good here for that final podium spot. Keeping an eye here to see if Malloy is going to be able on his own, and doesn't look like it. He's dropped off fairly significantly now.
Last time through, the fastest of these cars was actually Chuck Hines, but he looks to have slipped this lap, maybe made a mistake. But Jimmy Ebre is not going to let Max G get away with it. He kind of got past last lap and then has responded by being able to follow the Prelude driver, figure out a couple of things, and is keeping up nicely.
Once again, down through turn 1, and I was just watching, and Greg Malloy just turned a lap over 2 seconds faster than Hines, so that one's not settled yet either.
It's not getting too hot yet, but Joe Mosier actually took a full second out of the lead for Danny Steyn last lap through. As that one comes together, we'll certainly cut back to it, but Malloy wants the position back from Chuck Hines. This is for 5th.
Ooh, and a big wiggle by Hines, and he is off, and tried to keep that car in a straight line, knowing that if he got sideways, this is exactly what would happen. He's got to be really careful here rejoining with traffic coming. That was too bad. He did exactly what he needed to do, but it's just bumpy there, and it started to bump, and then it starts to slide in that grass. You just literally pick up speed when it's wet.
Yeah, it's like ice. It just sends you on for a ride. It's actually pretty lucky he didn't come back on the track a little further.
Yes.
Presumes, and that's kind of heartbreaking. He had such a good start again from 14th to 5th, and now probably back closer to 14th.
Take another look at that here, Tomo.
Oof. Happened so fast. Just a slight overcorrection, caught a puddle, and sent him into the grass. And once you're on the grass, you are no longer driving the car. You are a passenger.
Yeah, you're just sitting there hoping. And yeah, he did everything he possibly could to keep those wheels straight once that happened. So now, work to do for him as he has dropped back, obviously, significantly here. And see what he's able to do. What now we're paying attention, as you said, to that margin. Steyn to Mosier is down to just a tick over 3 seconds. Now the question is Malloy, he's not that far back of the G. Libre Ebrey battle, and he might have some speed here with that front drive car at CRX. He just came back at Hines incredibly quickly.
Yeah, crossing the halfway point of the race. And one of the things that's tough with these rain races is confidence. If you start the race with no mistakes and you continue to get quicker and quicker and quicker, you're building that confidence. But the moment you have a mistake, like we've seen Malloy make or Chuck Hines, you get rattled, and you have to get back in your rhythm and trust that you can at least do what you were doing. Maybe don't do what you tried that time again, but
yes.
you have to get back into your rhythm, or the pace will slow significantly. It looks like Malloy has done a great job to resume the pace that he was running and resets his personal best fastest lap last time through.
And one of the things you have to do when you're driving in the rain is you just constantly need to adjust. What worked, as you said, the previous lap might not. You see Ebrey there running a little wider line, but the car started to come around on him, but he floated some pretty good speed. But you're not just always adjusting just on the steering wheel in corrections, but your line, your braking point, all sorts of things you have to be paying attention to even more intensely than you do in the dry. So things have settled just a little bit. We're going to take a quick break and listen to a little about our sponsors. We'll be right back.
Why race? Because it's in our blood. A love of driving that pushes us as hard on the road as it does on the track. It's why we reinvented the roast and put a piece of it into every car we make. It's why we refine, rethink, and refine again. And it's why we'll always engineer to your heart's BPM, not simply an engine's RPM. Why race? Why indeed?
When the finish line calls, we answer. Hit the road with insurance protection from Hagerty. Whether you drive a built racer, sports car, or exotic, and save an average of $264. Get a quote today at Hagerty.com.
Welcome to that magic realm. Between here and there, a no man's land, and everyone's land. Where great expectations grow, and rewards are given to the swift, the perceptive, and the daring. Introducing the Mazda CX-30 Turbo with all-wheel drive. More power for your pursuit.
We're back at Hagerty Race Day here at the 58th running of SCCA's National Championship Runoffs. Thanks again to Mazda for presenting our broadcast. And tell you what, Denny Steyn, while we were in break, we looked at the monitors, and that margin had dropped to just a tick over a second. And the reason was Joe had just turned a 2-minute 2.7 to a 2.04 for Denny. But it looks like Denny got through some traffic a bit cleaner than Mosier did, and that gap's going to open up again.
He sure did. Just in Sector 1 alone, Mosier is 3 seconds, or 2.5 seconds at least, slower than Danny Steyn on this specific lap. So the lead battle that was coming together has spread back out to the tune of maybe 2.5 seconds by the end of this lap, which is unfortunate. We were leaning forward slowly, waiting for Mosier to kind of catch up.
We have a full chorus yellow too, so that huge gap from Mosier back to Max G in that battle is going to evaporate here. Full chorus here at the not working lap 9 of 19. And it's somebody off to the outside of turn 4 in the gravel. And the gravel does its job. It grabs you and stops you from sliding farther and hitting something. But when you're stuck in the gravel, if you get there, somebody else can. And so you're literally a sitting target there until they come and move you. So we are under a full course caution. But for Denny Steyn and Joe Mosier, who were thinking, well, we can just settle this one between the two of us. With the speed we're seeing from like Malloy and G and Ebrey, this could be fun. All right.
That was pretty trick.
That was just a little bit of a deja vu moment here at the runoffs. Going to try and get to the replay of what happened here. Oh, Mosier. Wow. Is that Mosier? That's what happened to Mosier. In his lap time, he got really crossed up, and it just totally inadvertently, but he punted him firmly into the gravel.
When we heard there was a replay, I wondered if this car was in the gravel related to Joe Moser's slow first sector, and sure enough, he's got a little bit of damage on the right front of that, or left front of that car. It is a steel fender, so it looks pretty sturdy, and if he didn't lock the alignment out, he'll be okay, but that's unfortunate. It looks like he maybe was either surprised by the lack of grip or maybe some target fixation onto the lapped car, focused on making sure he got by it clean, and ended up where he was looking.
Absolutely. That, to me, that was a moment you see in ice racing.
Yeah.
A lot, where the car just suddenly has one of those weird snaps. And so Moser, who'd been obviously running incredibly quick, but got the lap car between himself and Denny, but then behind them, you've got a few more lap cars, but that whole big, huge gap is going to be closing up. And there you see Max G, and he's bringing Ebre right along with, and then another lap car, then Malloy, who are all running pretty quickly too. So how quickly they can clear these lap cars, they might be right back in the hunt of this.
Yeah, for sure. And hopefully those lap cars are kind of aware that they're in the lead pack.
Right.
They're not going to know specifically which cars are part of the lead pack, but they're going to know they're not quite in this race. But they do have their own race going on, so they don't have to disappear. We just will hope that they sort themselves out pretty quickly.
And as the field now starting to pack up behind the pace car here, you had a look there at Steven Zhu. And the reason we're paying a bit of attention to Steven, we saw him come up and get racy up near the front. And, I mean, he's done some pro racing and the like, and so it didn't surprise us. But then we both realized that he started 29th and has worked his way up into the top 10, had been running up in the 6th spot in his Honda Civic. So we've got that Sunoco Hard Charger Award. I got to believe he's going to be leading in that category right now, at least. What a drive from the back.
Yeah, pretty much a shoe-in for that. You got to believe, as the lights are still on the pace car, it looks like, so we might go one more time by. I'm not sure, but just behind him is Chuck Hines, a driver we were watching earlier in the number 57, that green MX-5. Not in the camera frame right now, but he had that spin, or that slide, we should say, and is now back right behind the cars that he's challenging for position in Steven Zhu and Steven Johnson. So that's a little bit of redemption opportunity for Chuck Hines.
He was certainly running quick laps and having a good run. Then right behind him was Taz Harvey, who dropped to 12th, then had worked his way up by the time this caution came around back into 9th. And that will bring him a little bit closer up into this mix as well. So this one's going to be going. Now you'll notice upper left-hand corner, you see that the lap count has changed to time. And just with this caution and the lap times they're running, 19 laps was not going to happen within the 40-minute time window, so it is now a timed race. There is Taz Harvey, and he is not only a really talented driver, he's just a great character, wicked sense of humor, and it's a real treat. When I was calling some of these races, I actually spent some time in pit lane when he was doing some of the IMSA stuff, and doing interviews with him down in the pits was always absolutely hilarious and great fun.
You can almost see the sense of humor when he's driving sometimes. It just drives pretty fun.
Yeah.
Had a great charge last year at the Road America event where he was challenging for, if I remember correctly, either a top 5 or a podium, and maybe had an engine expire or something like that. So a little bit of redemption happening at this event this year. But there's a look at the top 2, the orange and blue MX-5 and then the orange CRX are your first and second place cars.
And we are going green next time by. And as you said, all these cars that are down a lap, you hope that if they're going to help, they just come out of 14 and get way down out of the way. But one of the things that you'll hear a lot in drivers' meetings is don't help. Let us come by you because we've got a plan on how we're going to get past you. But in this instance, if they all just stay low and out of the way, I'm sure all of this top group going for the medals would appreciate that.
Yeah, learning to become invisible on a racetrack is a skill set all on its own. And sometimes you see that when you watch Formula One qualifying. Those guys are great at being invisible when they're not on a hot lap, but not necessarily something everyone gets to experience. There is Denny Stripling, who you may recognize of Spec Racer Ford fame.
Yeah.
This is a car they brought to the runoffs just for fun. They race it in Endurance Racing Series. It's not fully prepped for this category by any stretch, but they did bring some rain tires, and he's having a great race. Started in the 21st spot and is now challenging for something like 11th to 13th, as he actually just slipped back to 14th last time through, but is in a great battle with a bunch of cars. And they always say rain's the great equalizer. He's experiencing that right now in a slightly underprepared car.
Right. But, yeah, it's underprepared, but he is really good in the momentum car, the Spec Racer Ford 3, and in the wet, smooth is everything, and that's what it is. And even, as you said, if you have a ton of horsepower in the wet, sometimes that really doesn't help you much. And so and most importantly of all, he's running the runoffs at Indy, and he's running inside that number. So that's what matters. A few more of our competitors here. Looking at the number 81 of Hugh McAlfee in the Flat Out Motorsports Mazda. There's the number 61, Scott Bettinger, the Don Preston Racing Mazda Hoosier Miata. All right, here we go. Pace car now. We'll go straight on here. Hayward, what's the word down in a damp pit lane?
Guys, I'm here with Mike Bulletin, who's talking about the MX-5 car that's towards the back of the field at the moment, and we can come back to it, but we want to get a chance to talk to him a little bit about that before the race is over. So tell me a little bit about this car, the MX-5 car. Why is this an attractive platform?
It's built kind of to be a cheap, effective car to run, reliable and easy to tech, so that it kind of highlights the driver's performance more than the car. You kind of get a better sense of that, and it's a good ladder system.
Are they fun to drive?
Absolutely. I can't even imagine out there in the rain it'd be a blast. They like to slide around.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's going to be really, really cool when that all comes up and online. We're looking forward to that, and this race is back and underway, and boy, Denny did a great job on that restart, and Moser now has G all over his six. There goes Denny. Look at that lead he's already built up.
He's got a huge lead, and I was going to point out how important it is for Moser to be paying attention to when Danny goes, but Danny went before, in the acceleration zone leading up to the green. The lapped car between them, you can't pass it until the green actually comes out. He didn't quite go fast enough, and that's built that big lead for Danny Steyn. Now we do have about 13 minutes of green flag running left, and Moser was quicker pretty regularly coming back to that full course yellow, so he might have a chance, but that's a long way. Look at that gap.
Yeah, well, I mean, and Denny absolutely perfect per the rule. And when you've got a lap car between you, if they don't do a wave around or have those lap cars drop to the back, they're there. And like you said, Denny rolled into the acceleration zone and went, and the lap car didn't go with him. And that, is maybe an instruction when you get there, when that leader goes, just go. And so now Moser has work to do in two fronts. One, trying to run down Denny, and two, trying to keep Max G behind him.
And Max G has now got a perfect view of what Moser was doing to be the fastest car on track, so he gets to respond every single time Moser goes into a corner, try to replicate it and go as fast as Moser was, and you can see it's pretty well working for him. He's stick with him to maybe the tune of a second, and is still within the sights, certainly within the spray.
And there is Jimmy Ebre in the Honda Civic out of Santo Domingo, as he still sits in a very good fourth spot right there in that blue and red machine, and then behind him is Malloy. Interested to see what Malloy might be able to do here. And Steven Zhu has got back around Steven Johnson. He jumped back up into the sixth place from 29th. That's 23 positions he's made up in this race already. That is impressive as they come whistling down the straight here. And here comes Malloy. He just looks so quick. He's up alongside Ebre. This is for fourth. Is it going to be a braking duel? Malloy going to try and park it around the outside. Does. Nice job. Ebre was pretty gentlemanly there.
Certainly was. And we saw that he actually got in a little deep, a little slippery when he was side by side with Max G. Learned his lesson and made sure that he left the racing space that he should have with Malloy going by. So that's going to promote Malloy up to fourth, Ebre back to fifth. And then they've got a pretty good gap back to the next group of cars. It's going to be Chuck Hines in that green MX-5.
Yeah, Hines, Steven Johnson. Here's a look at Jude. She's working through. Does he drop back?
It's either drop back or Mike Taylor has done a massive charge on that restart. Mike Taylor is in the white with the kind of red graphics inspired by the old British touring cars. And I think Mike might have charged forward. No, actually, you're right. It is. Steven Zhu dropped back a little bit.
Sixth. Yeah, he's dropped down just a little bit. And Amy Mills continuing to do a great job sitting there ninth now in the number 9. Part of this mix. There is the 39 of Mike Taylor. Oh, Yeah, something's not quite right with you. He suddenly is off pace and off line, trying not to get in the way of people. That's unfortunate. What a drive he put together.
It sounded like the car was pretty off song when it went by our microphones there. It's heartbreaking, but it's still got some speed left in it. Maybe an intermittent problem. Something got wet, perhaps.
That red car is Tom Van Veen in the Honda Civic CX out of Bellingham, Washington. Look at this lead right now that Denny has, as we are under 10 minutes to go, just under 10 minutes to go. Then Moser, then G, then Malloy now, and Ibre. And Malloy, I'd be really curious to see what kind of lap time he turns here. Because that last lap, he was booking, and he's a full second faster than G right now. So this final podium spot is going to still be under contest, that's for sure.
So is the final spot in the top 5. Chuck Hines in the green MX-5 has really put on a charge on the restart and caught Jimmy Ibre, who slipped to 5th. So that is the 5th and 6th place cars. And while we watch them navigate turn 3, I was going to point out Joe Moser has that much lighter CRX, and while the rain tires don't like to get overheated, they do still respond to heat. Maybe he lost the heat and doesn't have it quite there yet because he's significantly off the pace that he was running before, while Danny Steyn has just resumed right back at that speed.
That's a really good point. Ooh, I was thinking that we were going to see a big lunge, and so did Ibre. Moving that wheel up just a little bit. Now he's side by side all the way through 6, up into 6A, and around the outside. Waiting to see if he manages to make it stick. Now it's a drag race down into 7. This is good stuff. Taz Harvey has now come up and moved into 7th. And it sticks for Chuck Hines. He's now up into 5th. Ibre right there. And there's Taz just flashing into view in that white number 8. I'm curious as to what kind of lap times they're going to be running here at this stage. Malloy on that last lap, as I said, is running really, really quickly. And I think he's going to be right up with G. Look at Ibre absolutely refusing to just let Hines make this one permanently stick. Side by side now up into turn 11, heading toward 12. And I would think here that Hines in that light Mazda, and one of the reasons these Mazdas are pretty quick in the wet is they're just so incredibly balanced.
They are very well balanced. He had that little bit of a slip coming out of turn 10, which allowed Ibre to get alongside, but then Ibre couldn't quite do anything with it. You saw that Ibre's maybe just a little bit behind the car right now as he almost drove off the track exiting 13, which is going to allow Hines to drive away in 5th. And all of that has brought Taz Harvey and Steven Johnson into the battle. Harvey in the white Integra and Johnson in the black and yellow Miata.
So basically, this battle for that 5th spot is on. And Taz is really putting in some laps here. That last lap, he just ran 2 seconds quicker than Ibre did. Even quicker than Hines, and there he is. I mean, he's basically caught them already. See what Taz is going to be able to do. And again, G running about 6/10 faster than Moser. And Malloy right in that same speed window. But Taz is on the move here. That's just great to be able to announce Taz Racing again.
He's had a heck of a charge. Remember, he slipped at the start all the way back to 15th on lap 2 and is now battling for 5th. So if he'd have not slipped, who knows?
Yeah, and speaking of battling, G is on it right now and right on the rear deck of Moser. And Malloy is coming along for the ride, too.
Trying to get a really good look at the left front of Moser's car, but it almost looks like it has positive camber in the left front tire, meaning instead of the contact patch normally gaining grip on the way into the corner, it's actually losing grip. I think it's got a little bit of damage from that contact with the lapped car, and that's certainly hurting his pace. Yeah, look at it, struggling to get the grip on that turn, and that's the tire that he'd be leaning on, just shoving it across the surface. It's not stood up completely upright, but there's definitely some damage on that left front.
And that's from that big thunk he had earlier in the race, obviously, and it could change setup on the car. Yeah, that's a really good point. You can see the difference right now. G is doing everything he can. He's going to swing down to the inside. You can see Moser sort of faints over a little bit. Normally you think he's trying to break the draft, but I think in this case it's more you're trying to make sure he's got spray in his face.
Yeah, it's very possible. You look at the seams too. You can see the cars kind of hunt when they get those wet seams. Whoa, big slide for G. Keeps it on the track, but these guys are pushing hard.
Yeah, and that's part of the game. I mean, when I was first starting, well, wait, here's G dives down to the inside, side by side through turn 4. But G, just with that inside line, he couldn't roll as much speed. And look at Malloy closing up on the back of these guys. So we have a multi-car battle forming for that 5th spot, but this battle for the final podium spot's going to be 3 cars strong here in short order too, I think.
And all these guys have podiums or wins to their name at the runoffs, but only 2 of them can come away from this battle with a medal around their neck. It's highly unlikely that it'll be gold at this point in the race, but Danny Steyn is completely checked out. But all 3 of them are going to want one of those medal spots.
You bet, and working at it. But boy, I'll tell you, Craig Malloy has just been really impressive. After the first few laps of this race, he figured out where the puddles are, as they say, and he has been really quick. I was going to say, when I was first starting announcing and the like and corner working and everything, there was a Formula V driver up in Land O'Lakes region at Brainerd, and he used to talk about that in a race when it was wet, that big drag strip had those seams that would run all the way down and they'd hold water. He said he always would try and put a set of, one side of his tires right on that seam and pull all that water up, throw it in the back, into the face of whoever was chasing him. He said, you do what you can. It's like, you guys were a little wide in the corner. So you got that cloud of dust and dirt and debris and a couple of pebbles.
Who, me?
Oh, you pro guys,
Yeah.
Never do that here. That is 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So we're heading into the final 3.5 minutes. Moser's been able to clear things a little bit. Looking at the times, virtually identical. Malloy, all at about the same in terms of times, although G off by about 0.3 to the others here. And here is that battle for the final podium spot. Hines and Ebre. Taz took a run, but he seems to have faded just a little bit.
Seems like the drivers are a little hesitant to try moves at this point. I think they seem pretty comfortable with where the grip they found is and are maybe hesitant to really experiment much after being on track for 37 minutes. With 3 minutes to go in this one, I think G might have a little bit of speed, Ebre might have a little bit of speed, but they're hesitant to try it. Maybe just yet, maybe on the last lap, but I don't see them really making a lot of moves just yet.
Well, I think you bring up a good point. When you've been out exploring and now, okay, I found where the grip is. Now you're running at the absolute limit of the best grip area on the track. To make a pass, you have to move off of that back into a lower grip scenario. That could be really sketchy. So I think you're right. And it's like, well, I'm just going to follow along here. And if I have to, I'll do something dramatic on that last lap to try and go after it here.
I think Chuck Hines may be feeling the pressure just a little bit. Look at him protecting up, moving in a car width, and then there's a lot of water there still on the turn into turn 7. He floats for a second and allows Ebre to come all the way to the bumper. There's nowhere to go with it.
Up front, just keeping an eye on things. Denny Steyn comes through, and boy, he is just flying. He continues to throw down laps a couple seconds faster than anybody on track right now. He is in the proverbial zone right now, no question about that. But virtually nothing again between Moser and G. About 0.8. So it's that close. And we're expecting white flag has just come out for Denny Steyn. So we are on our final lap. So this is when you got to pull the trigger if you think you've got anything left.
Ebre is as close as he's ever been to the back bumper of Chuck Hines coming onto the front straightaway. This is the battle for 5th. Top 5s are bragging rights in their own right here at the runoffs. Ebre is going to look to the outside, but that MX-5 has some serious straight line speed. Starts to pull out a car width or 2.
It does indeed. There's Taz behind them in the white Acura, and then Steven Johnson in the Mazda up front. It is all Denny Steyn, but this battle for second. G dropping off a little bit, and now he is closing it back down again. And they've put a little room between themselves and Malloy. So the question is, what does G have? They're both in the medals. Do you risk that by trying to move? Or is the silver that much more important to you than the bronze? Risk versus reward is playing out right here.
I think if I'm G, I'm not going to do anything bold, no high risk, low percentage moves. But if the opportunity presents itself, if Mosier makes a mistake, if that damage to Mosier's car starts to hinder him just at the last minute, you got to try it.
Just following his tracks right now all the way around and hoping that he's close enough to pressure Mosier into a little bit of a mistake. Joe, not one who's really prone to error. He doesn't feel pressure very easily. And he's got that trick windscreen clearing system as well. My question with that is there must be something in there to filter water out, because otherwise I would think you'd be getting a fine spray on the inside of the windshield. But whatever, it seems to be working pretty well, but nobody is within the same zip code of Denny Steyn, and he is coming up for the line. This will be a third gold medal in runoffs competition for Denny Steyn, and absolutely superb run for Denny here. Here comes second, and finally G just decided he's not going to make a mistake. I want a medal. So Mosier will come through from outside of the front row and finish in the second spot, grab the silver, and G will take home the bronze. And here is this look at Harvey.
Out of nowhere with the power down out of turn 13. He's got the long way around. This is going to be tough all the way out to the wall. Who's got the motor? Harvey.
Harvey's got a nose ahead. We've seen that motor for Hines, but Harvey has enough and gets it done. Wow, what a finish. And Ebre dropped back right at the end there. So Taz Harvey, that's an interesting race he had. Qualified 5th, started 5th, went back to 15th, back to 5th. Taz made it a little bit difficult for himself at the start, but man, what a rebound drive in these conditions. He's got to be proud of that one. Congratulations to Taz, but Denny Steyn, Mosier, and G, they're the ones that are going to be heading for the medals, and of course, a talk with Hayward.
All of these guys in the top 10, and for that matter, the whole field, everyone stayed on track other than that slight incident that we had. Danny Steyn's putting on a show now, goes drifting through turns 8 and 9. Oh, careful. There we go. Looks really good, and congratulations. You can see how much this means to him.
Yeah, he is a heck of a driver and a heck of a character. And like I said, the man is just magnificent in the wet. He really is stout and pulled it off. So, he's as you said, he's out there throwing it around, enjoying this lap. And once we hear from him, he'll get back in the car, or probably just stay in the car and go out and take another lap with that checkered flag and a couple of crew guys from that OPM Autosport group. And tell the folks what OPM stands for.
Oh, I don't know.
Other people's money.
I was going to say it'll be really impressive if he can do the drifting with the flag out the window.
Yes.
Or the crew guy in the car.
Or, yeah, watch the crew guy pinballing around inside there, trying to hang on to the flag for Joe Mosier. Hey, a silver to go with a gold. He already won here. Not a bad runoffs.
No, and these are two different cars, so
yes,
they had a lot of work set out for them this year coming into the season to prep an entire new car. You can see the damage on the left front that really hindered him. You have to wonder what would have been if that lapped traffic were not a factor at the start and if that damage were not there. Obviously, that's a lot of what-ifs to start bench racing with, but
sure,
Mosier was certainly on a charge and made his point early on in this race before it kind of got away from him.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And you could see it once you pointed it out. It was a great spot by you that wheel had been stood straight up and just not getting the plant that he would have wanted. So, but in and under the awning comes your now 3-time runoffs gold medalist, Denny Steyn. Hayward is there. You can take a look inside that cockpit. As I said, this is a car that is extremely well turned out, and then Denny gets in and just extracts everything out of it and does a great job. Again, Harvey up into that 5th spot. Hines, Johnson, Ebre on that last lap faded rather badly, ends up 8th. Tom Van Steen up into 9th. And Amy Mills continuing the drive. There it is, the gold medal for the 3rd time now around the neck of Denny Steyn. Hayward?
Danny, you look awfully happy. Is that because it's finally over?
Yesterday was just a day of mediocrity in my case. Just couldn't do anything yesterday. the rains came today, and normally I'd be ecstatic because I love the rain, but nobody's run any rain laps at Indy, and I've never run in the rain in this car either, so this was all an unknown. Joe started closing in the middle of the race and wasn't sure he was making up the time, and so I started pushing the brake zones a little bit deeper.
You're known very much as a focus first driver. You do a lot of study, you do a lot of learning. What is it like to have to maintain focus in conditions like this?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that 15 minutes before the start of the race, we couldn't get the car started. For the hour before that, we could not get the car started. So, to come from that sort of setback, you then have to switch your mind around and get into the zone. And the rain was lovely because you cannot for a second let your mind wander for just a moment, because it's all it takes, one moment and you're out. I didn't have any moments until my cool down lap when I let it all hang out and had some fun, but it was very much a controlled race.
Well, congratulations on a championship. The steering wheel says it's just another race. I don't think that's true anymore, is it?
No, but that's just to keep me from overdriving, which is the tendency to do in these important races.
Well, congratulations to you. Congratulations to Tom, everybody at OPM. Enjoy your victory lap.
Yeah, it was a beauty. And he has a good, makes a good point here. All of that stuff that was unfolding and what it does to you. Race drivers, and in certain levels, have to, one of their best components is a short memory.
Yeah.
Is just being able to take something like that or compartmentalizing. That's what, I hear is just like, okay, forget that. That's over here now.
Exactly. That's the confidence thing we talked about for some of the little slip-ups and mistakes we saw early on. Those drivers who all ended up finishing successfully were able to shake that monkey off their back really quickly after making those small mistakes. And if you start to dwell on it, that's when they compound. But when you don't make any, like Danny didn't,
yeah, it was
then
brilliant.
You don't have any monkeys to shake.
Yeah, that was just a superb run. You just saw him take off on his lap of honor. And we're looking forward here in a couple of seconds, I would think, to hear from our second and third place finishers. And we get the word, Hayward's ready.
Joe, a bit of a couple of battle scars from this. Tom in the booth was saying that it looked like the car might have even had some positive camber at times. Were you struggling with the front end?
I was struggling with everything out there. Visibility was bad. Car was getting pretty good when I was catching Danny, but we were going through lap traffic. I feel terrible. I sideswiped somebody. Didn't have a lot of room, but the rear stepped and then made contact. So got a little damage, and car was towed in about 3 inches after that. So after that, it was a real handful. I couldn't see well. So.
Well, a first and a second today in 2 different races. Not a bad runoffs here at Indy.
Not a bad one. I'll take it. Danny drove a hell of a race, so congrats to him. Congratulations
to you. We're going to bring Max up real quick. Max, this guy told me on grid that he'd much rather have a Prelude than a CRX in these conditions. How was it for you?
Oh man, it was a little slippery for sure. None of us, I don't think, had any idea what this track was like in the wet coming into it, so it really evened everything out. Congrats to Danny, first of all, man. That dude has best car, really good driver. I mean, he's just all over it. But yeah, it was a little slippery, hard to see for sure. But I had to keep it weaving in and out to try to find something. But no, it was fun though.
So there was a theory in the booth that you guys were making sure instead of trying to break the draft, you're trying to make sure the guy behind you couldn't see with spray. Any of that going on?
Hey, that worked actually. Yeah, poor Greg back there. He really blind. But yeah, no, he was doing a good job. He defended perfectly. We raced together since 2016 now, and we're always clean together. So it's always.
Well, guys, just a couple of buddies out racing cars. Great day here at Indy.
Absolutely. And what a show they put on. I mean, once Denny just checked out, they kept this race really interesting as to what was going to unfold here. And here you see Denny out on his lap of honor, the victory lap, when you are a champion in the SCCA National Championship Runoffs. This is a pretty special moment.
Sure is. No drifting this time. Just taking the views in and enjoying those last couple turns here at Indy Motor Speedway.
Take a look here at the top 10 provisional results, and that is Denny Steyn, Joe Mosier, Max G, That's Your Medals, Malloy, and Harvey with that intriguing roller coaster ride of a race. Chuck Hines in 6th, Steven Johnson in 7th, Jimmy Ebre, we're not exactly sure what happened, but dropped off just a little bit there. Tom Van Veen and Amy Mills, once again, started in 16th and moved up into the top 10. Let's take a look at some highlights from this one. And it all starts with the start. And there, Denny Steyn looked like he just may have been in the wrong gear. Malloy actually gave him a little tap down there, and Mosier jumped out, but it didn't take Steyn long, did it?
No, this power move to the lead got him there, and then he checked out from here on the rest of the way. Jimmy Ibre made himself a little bit of a nuisance for Danny, but otherwise some great racing from a new driver to this class from what we know. And then this was this small mistake that Mosier made with high consequences for both drivers. Unfortunately, the lapped car stuck in the gravel. Mosier with some damage. We speculated camber. It ended up being Toyo for that CRX, but that battle for the top 5 was just raging all race.
Absolutely fierce. And you can see Hines and Ibre going after it. And it was this close an awful lot of the time. Both of them really up on the wheel and pushing hard. A big slide right there. Hines had a couple of offs and had to come back from a big slide earlier in the race. But when it was all said and done, Denny Steyn getting a 3rd gold medal, checking out by a margin of victory of 16.7 seconds. And then Mosier coming through for the silver and Max G for the bronze. And there you see it, a kiss of the medal. And again, it says, it tells the world you are a champion at the runoff. So fascinating race as always. Want to say a big thank you once again to Mazda for presenting the broadcast of this 58th running of the SCCA Runoffs. That wraps up our coverage of the Run for the Gold in STL. For Tom O'Gorman and for Hayward down in pit lane, I'm Greg Creamer. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Take care.